So this woman is one of the most awarded female public relations experts in the world, listed by PR Week's Global PR, listed in PR Week as Global PR Power Book, named as PR News' top woman in PR, and inducted into the 2017 PR Week Hall of Fame. This former CEO of Havas PR North America from 2009 to 2018, co-author of over 16 books. There might be a thing or two that this woman can tell you about transforming business in the 21st century. Ladies and gentlemen, please give an incredible, warm round of applause for Marian Salzman!
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for making time to talk to me today. I'm here to talk to you about transforming business in the 21st century. I'm here to do it through my lens, as you can tell from my very apparent accent. I'm American. I've spent about half of my working career living and working in the US, balanced the rest of the world. I am currently Senior Vice President of Communications at this science and tech startup called Philip Morris International. Why do I call it a science and tech startup? See if you agree with me in another half hour. But Philip Morris has come an awfully long way, and yet we're really at the very beginning of an important journey. You might know us. Hold on, where's my slides? Hold on. Okay, you might know us as that tobacco company. You might know us as the people that brought probably the generation before me, the very beginning of my sort of teenage adult years, the Marlboro Man. But we're really pretty different today. And I hope you're going to understand all the pain, suffering, energy, and positive enthusiasm that comes from making these kinds of changes. I'm fighting with this clicker. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to imagine something for a moment. Really indulge me. Imagine. So close your eyes, get very zen about being creative. And it's many years from now, this unspecified date in the future. And I'm telling you how PMI used to sell cigarettes. Do you remember when people actually used to sell cigarettes? Imagine back. People will not believe some did this. That was before the turn of the 21st century, when scientists took over the industry and, in concert with anti-smoking measures aimed at the prevention of both the initiation and the encouragement of cessation, they invented smoke-free alternatives that gradually consigned cigarettes to history. Imagine a time when cigarettes become history. One day we are going to give that speech. It might not be me who gives it. Frankly, I'm old. I'm tired. For me, probably not. But there's going to be somebody that's going to give that speech in the next 15 or 20 years, I hope. And it might not even happen in 15 or 20 years. Maybe it's going to take longer, but I hope not, because I hope I'm around to see it, hear it. But we're going to look back, and we're going to see the transformation from smoking tobacco to smoke-free alternatives as one of the great scientific and one of the great public health success stories of this century. Perhaps the scientists who are inventing different smoke-free ways of using tobacco will one day actually be honored for their contributions to public health, just like the 20th century's other great healthcare pioneers who developed antibiotics, vaccines, or made breakthroughs in DNA. Perhaps. But I have no doubt it will be seen as a great turning point. And look, it may be several years from now. It may be a couple of decades from now even. It could even be 100 years. But it will happen because it's our vision of the future, and it has already begun. And I'm going to ask you to keep thinking about this as we live in this age of rapid change, of rapid transformation, of an increasing belief that everything is possible. So look, if you were born a century ago and lived to a ripe old age, you'd have witnessed the arrival of the car, commercial air travel, the telephone, and then the cell phone. I remember my first cell phone. I was living in Amsterdam, and they brought me this thing that looked like a brick. And they said to me, this is a mobile telephone. And there was nothing mobile about it. It was too heavy for me to carry virtually anywhere. And that really was within a generation ago. The internet came along, huge medical advances, all unimaginable, really just a generation before. In 1919, for example, one of the fastest and most reliable means of communication was a real bird, not a Twitter bird, a real bird. You sent a pigeon with a message. A messenger was also someone on a horse, not an app. While encryption meant writing messages in code, which needless to say was not a computer program. And it would have taken me several days to reach your wonderful city from where I live in Lausanne, Switzerland, not several hours with a layover in Frankfurt Airport. The world has really, really changed. It's hard to conceive that any generation will see as much technological change as the one born in the early part of the 20th century. Yet we're witnessing change at a lightning pace, and it's just more subtle and less tangible. Think about this: artificial intelligence, virtual and augmented reality, blockchain. These may not be as physical and easy to understand as the invention of the airplane or the launch of satellite technology, but it doesn't make them any less significant. They're going to impact how we live, how we work, how we love, how we study. They're going to impact virtually everything. How many of you have been on a Tinder date? Come on, put your hands up. Okay. A decade ago, if I asked that question, they would have been like, a Tinder date? Good romance? What's she talking about? The world has changed, and it's just the beginning. Alexa and Siri have made AI normal at home. Every morning when I'm in the States, I say, Alexa, what is the temperature? And she tells me what to expect for the day so I know how to dress. They've also normalized things in the classroom. You can now go to Alexa or Siri and ask them to do the work that Wikipedia would do, but they'll do it for you as voice. But my generation, we had to ride our bicycles to a public library and look at an encyclopedia that was updated once a year. That feels like so historic, you don't even want to think about things so long ago. Self-driving cars are no longer something out of sci-fi. Face recognition is probably as important for criminal justice as the advent of DNA. Blockchain obviously will revolutionize the way we spend and the way we vote. And meanwhile, in gaming and online entertainment, training, medical advances, etc., AR and VR are changing everything. And this is all really well documented. Today, we are seeing not so much inventions, but innovations, but transformations. Fossil fuels going over to renewables, petrol and diesel to electric, dairy to non-dairy, meat to meat-free. Unthinking consumption towards ethical living, downsizing, flying less, staycations and vacationing closer to home simply because it's good for the planet, which makes it good for you. So let's talk about my company and our journey of transformation. How does this large multinational with 80,000 employees, whose product comes from a plant, reinvent itself to produce something that's electronic? Aren't big companies like ours supposed to find it really troublesome to change direction on a dime? As I'll come to later on, changing direction requires this combination. And it's not really a secret sauce. It's a combination each and every one of us has to figure out that brings together leadership from the top, demand from the bottom, and a serious commitment to research and development. Perhaps the best way to illustrate our story is to share some numbers and infographics from that journey. It was in the mid-1990s that a bigger group called Altria, of which PMI was part at that point, first started working on developing an electronic alternative to the cigarette. Remember, back in the 90s, we already knew smoking was not good for you. Our first heated tobacco system was brought to market 5 years ago in 2014. In 2016, the PMI CEO, my boss, Andre Kolantzopoulos, announced publicly that the goal of Philip Morris International was to replace cigarettes. with less harmful alternatives as soon as possible. To date, we've been granted 4,600 patents worldwide, and as of the middle of last year, we're ranked 45th as the largest filer of patents in the European Union. IQOS, our smoke-free product, is now available in 47 markets. And since we launched our smoke-free products, more than 7.3 million smokers have converted to them and have given up combustible cigarettes. Our ambition is to convince all current adult smokers who would otherwise continue smoking to switch to smoke-free products as soon as possible. Our goal is that by 2025, 40 million smokers will have given up on cigarettes for good and will have switched to a smoke-free product in our portfolio. Because, look, smoke is the main problem. Those of you who don't know this, by the time you're finished listening to me, you're not going to be as happy to go barbecue or have a fireplace anymore. Everybody knows that cigarette smoking is bad, but not everybody knows why it's bad. The scientific consensus is that it's the smoking of cigarettes that generates the vast majority of the approximately 100 harmful compounds found in smoke. Nicotine is not risk-free and is addictive, but it is not the primary cause of smoking-related diseases. A smoker lights a cigarette, starting a high-temperature reaction, this thing called combustion or burning, and as the smoker draws air through the lit cigarette, the temperature increases to more than 600 degrees Celsius at the periphery of the burning zone. It's through this process of burning that the smoke gets created. So the challenge we put to our scientists can be stated relatively simply. Was it possible to continue using nicotine from tobacco in a similar way that didn't involve combustion and therefore didn't produce smoke? And simultaneously, could this product then be verified according to sound science practices, similar to what the pharmaceutical industry does, to show that eliminating smoke results in a less harmful alternative for those who would otherwise continue smoking? The solution, to borrow on a phrase, was to science the heck out of it. And if there's one thing we now know how to do at Philip Morris International, it's to do big science.
When you set out to reinvent something, you want to put your best people on it. Like 400 scientists and 1,000 leading-edge thinkers. You're chasing something as close to perfection as you can get. Something ahead of everyone else. Reducing the harm for the 1.1 billion people who continue to smoke. This is about breaking the paradigm and breaking through, using innovation to guide our way, giving rise to cutting-edge science. This is where heat is harnessed. This is where fire ends. When what you seek is revolution, only the brave go willingly. The result of over 1,500 patents and over a decade of focused R&D, this is reduced transcriptomic and proteomic biological network perturbations, satisfying aerosols, engineered through computational fluid dynamics, consistent experiences. Using state-of-the-art heat control technology, this is precision. This is the science behind a smoke-free future.
So look, as you can see in the video, things can take a long time in R&D, and it was 15 years before we had a product we felt we could bring to market. But the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And a journey of the length and the magnitude that we have undertaken needs a few other important ingredients: investment, talent, leadership, employee and societal engagement via communication, building relationships with key opinion leaders, and of course, with regulators. To give you an idea, it also required $6 billion in R&D, or 60% of global commercial expenditure dedicated to smoke-free products, 400 world-class scientists, and above all, we needed talent. In the beginning, as you can imagine, it was quite difficult to get top scientists to to work for a tobacco company. My colleague, Dr. Maura Gilchrist, is typical of those who join the company. She previously worked in the pharma industry. And interestingly, she and many other scientists were motivated by the desire and belief in what they could do for public health. As Maura said, at PMI, I have the opportunity to help address a global health problem and enable millions of adult smokers who would otherwise continue smoking to switch to less harmful alternatives. I knew that science and tech could be applied to this problem, and it must be possible to create better alternatives. Since we went public with our smoke-free commitment now almost 3 years ago, it has become a lot easier to recruit, and today there are many scientists at PMI who are similarly motivated. The first heated tobacco products were launched by various manufacturers, including what was at that time Altria, our holding company, in the late 1990s, but they saw no commercial success. The first e-cigarette was invented in China in 2003. But today we have a portfolio of both heated tobacco products and nicotine-containing vapor products under the umbrella name IQOS. Since none of these products burn tobacco, they don't reach the high temperatures needed to combust material and needed to produce smoke. Compared to cigarettes, they release far lower levels of harmful and potentially harmful chemicals. That said, they aren't risk-free, and they are addictive. Quitting cigarettes and nicotine altogether is the best choice. But for adult smokers that don't, they're a much better choice. Look, I am the global spokesperson for Philip Morris International. I am not only a non-smoker, I am a never smoker. So I'm here talking to you about science and research and development. I've never tried our product, and the company is exceedingly proud of that. At some point, you have to decide whether you're going through the motions of exploring alternative revenue streams or you're serious about making a commitment to the alternative. The dilemma is familiar to many businesses that have completely reinvented themselves. Businesses like Apple, like Burberry, like IBM, while others have adapted to new demands and to changes. Do you remember that Netflix began as an online DVD rental service? And how many of us could now live without our Netflix? Quite often, the decision to change means disrupting your own business. It takes a bold kind of leadership to make that jump. And believe me when I tell you, it's a scary leap for many people. It's often a lot easier to sit back and collect the money from the old way and hope that you'll be gone before the new world hits you. That wasn't the way we approached it. Our decision to commit to a smoke-free future was made by André Kolantzopoulos, our CEO. And as every CEO knows, sometimes you have to lead. And certainly his commitment to change has galvanized the entire company and given it a singularity of focus we hadn't enjoyed. But there are also real drivers of change. They are your employees, they are your coworkers, your peers, your family, and your friends. Our own journal of transformation was always going to be difficult unless we knew that it was something that the wider public, as well as our consumers, were calling for. I don't know how many of you have seen this, how many of you heard this phrase, but earlier this year we launched our Unsmoke Your World. Only we didn't really launch it so much as give support to people who wanted to move away from the old labels of smokers and non-smokers to unite behind a common goal, and that goal is a world without smoke. As an initiative intended to spark conversation, it's an urgent call to action to smokers, to non-smokers, to regulators, to agents of change across the world to develop a better future for the more than 1 billion adult smokers and their families, for people who love smokers, for people who have smokers in their community. It's a global project to accelerate positive change for all of those who don't have the opportunity right now to switch to better alternatives. It's about getting smoke out of your life. It's about getting it out of the lives of your family and friends. But it's very much driven by ordinary people. And what we've done so far is kickstart it in our own community at PMI. The campaign has a very simple message. We call it our triplet. If you don't smoke, don't start. If you smoke, quit. If you don't quit, change. We really do want people to not start, to quit, and if they don't quit, to change. It's something that is of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Just the other day, I was going for a walk with my mom, and someone walked past, and this guy walked past, said, "Oh, you got a cigarette made?" "No, sorry, I don't smoke." My mom turned around, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so proud to hear you say those words, that you don't smoke." My name's Alex. I'm 33, I'm from London. I'm a pastry chef, and I play drums in my spare time. I unsmoked 3 years ago in April. Yeah, it was tough. Kind of went through hell for about 3 days. I just basically stayed in bed, staring at the wall, going out my mind. My mom helped me a lot. She gave me a lot of moral support as a former smoker herself. It wasn't necessarily plain sailing from there. There's a lot of situations that you associate with smoking that stuck with me. Now I don't think I miss anything about smoking cigarettes. The things that I enjoyed about smoking, I've realized that smoking didn't actually make them any more enjoyable.
It's a real irony that it's a tobacco company that's saying if you don't smoke, don't start. If you smoke, quit. And if you don't quit, change. And we really believe as strongly in the first two as we do in the third part of our triplet. But look, when you work for a tobacco company, your first problem is to be sure that governments will let you put your change product on the market. And with so many others, we've had to go out and build a global conversation, a conversation around a smoke-free vision. So from Davos to New York City, where we went during UN General Assembly Week, to the Can Ideas Festival, which we went to last year and we'll go back this year, we're attempting to spark a debate, a dialogue. I don't ask you to agree with me. I don't ask you to agree with my company. I ask you to talk to me and explain to me your concerns and your reservations. We want to encourage a change in people who smoke and in those who care about them and in those who regulate access to alternatives. Davos 2019 was our first major attempt to meet with and engage decision makers. And while there were some people there that didn't want to talk with us, for the most part, what we discovered was a spirit of generosity, a willingness to listen to us, a willingness to disagree with us, but to do it in a respectful and dignified and dialogical way. Later this month, when we go back to the Can Ideas Festival, or what you call the Can Lions, we'll meet with important media opinion leaders again. And then in the fall, we'll go back to the UN General Assembly, which will present us for another opportunity to meet with ministers and the media to talk about how we can be part of the solution. What we believe as an important part of our transformation is the importance of a global conversation. For a decade, we hid behind walls. We didn't comment publicly. Not anymore. We are now committed to change today, and everyone must play a role in helping to unsmoke your world. Even if you disagree with me, you play a role because your questions, your comments, your challenges make us better at what we're trying to do. But unfortunately, not everyone talks to us without preconceived opinions or listens to what we have to say. And we cannot change our past. I only joined Philip Morris 15 months ago. You can't blame me for what happened in the 70s and 80s, but you certainly can ask me hard questions about how am I sure that we're a different company today. We say to our detractors, judge us by our actions today and by our science. And we submitted to the US FDA, the US Food and Drug Administration, over 2 million pieces of scientific paper to show them what we'd learned and what we wanted them to understand. We're open and we're transparent in communicating our smoke-free vision. Our science is published and is there for anyone to challenge or to verify. But if we allow past prejudice against tobacco companies to inform thinking, people will continue to condemn the people that need the help the most, those 1.1 billion adult smokers in the world today. If the only option presented to them is to quit, we know from human experience that many people won't quit. And the WHO, the World Health Organization, confirms this with their prediction that by 2025, there'll be the same number of smokers globally as there are today. In our view, people have got to have access to information on smoke-free alternatives, and they've got to be able to be encouraged to switch to them if they can't or won't quit. These alternatives are not risk-free. Said that before, I'll keep saying that we are not out to tell you they are risk-free, but they are better alternatives to continuing to smoke cigarettes. The transformation we asked of ourselves and that we're asking of ourselves is completely immense. 7.3 million people today, 40 million people in what I hope is still my working lifetime. That's a heck of a lot of work to do. And it's only doable with the right transformation mindset, with the right transformation commitment, and with the right community of people as colleagues, as employees, as part of our supply chain, who share our passion for change. I began this talk by asking you to imagine a time when Philip Morris would be known for science and technology. Our transformation towards this goal has involved opening up new channels of sales, new channels of communications. We've conducted scientific research and development, and we have a clinical justification of our new products. Such transformation is not impossible when you harness the science to innovate and have the political will to drive change to its conclusion. It's both things. It's science to innovate, it's political will to drive change. And look, some days you go home and you just want to crawl underneath your duvet, pull it over your head, and say, do I really have the energy to keep going? But the stakes are high enough, the upside is great enough, that we have no choice but to keep going. We've got to understand that cigarettes do not belong in the 21st century, and that ultimately we, the providers of cigarettes, have got to do a good job of improving the world we live in. We've got to make it a better place. Look, we've been around a very long time, but there's every reason to believe that when properly transformed, our best chapter, our best years are yet to come. Thank you very much.